Hello, I'm Saira Shakir, Associate Professor in Learning and Teaching at Leeds Trinity University. I'm here to talk to you about addressing the awarding gap through anti-racist practice. Now, these two things are intrinsically linked. In my view and in my experience, you can't address the awarding gap, which is a race and ethnicity issue, without embedding and implementing anti-racist practice. So we have to begin with getting everybody on board in becoming anti-racist. It's not enough to just be not racist. We have to be anti-racist. And being anti-racist means taking categorical actions to address racial discrimination and challenging inequity where we see it. Now, the awarding gap is a pernicious, wicked issue, which unfortunately disproportionately affects students from BAME, Black, Asian, minority ethnic backgrounds. We have a moral and ethical obligation to address the awarding gap within higher education. And in order to do that, we have to become anti-racist. So that's all of us being accountable, acknowledging our own privileges, our own lived experiences, our identity, our own biases, and our internal prejudices or stereotypes, and challenging these things and developing a journey of self-reflection to become a socially just, conscious person and individual in the higher education community. If we do this together in unity and solidarity, then I think we can build a real community of practice to address the awarding gap and becoming anti-racist university. We have to acknowledge the power dynamics that often exist between educators and students and build a community together with our students. If we want to get to the heart of what the problem is that's causing the awarding gap, which it's multifaceted and extremely complex, we need to start off by speaking to those who it affects, and that is our students. That is often our minoritized students. So let's dismantle those power structures and start speaking and hearing from our students. Let's listen and value their lived experiences and use that to shape and direct actions to address the awarding gap. Let's build that proper community and that family of practice to address this horrible issue. So this would be my starting point in terms of addressing the awarding gap at university.
Hi there, my name's Andy Briley. I'm the Head of Access, Participation and Outcomes, which is a really fancy title, and I currently work in the Office of Institutional Equity. The main part of my role is to oversee and regulate Leeds Trinity University's Access and Participation Plan. So within the Access and Participation Plan, we've got a number of different activities and strategies that aim to reduce the continuation, attainment and the awarding gap here at Leeds Trinity University that we see in the sector as a whole. And so there are probably a multitude of different reasons that contribute towards that awarding gap. But on a personal level, I still teach where I can here at Leeds Trinity University. And the way that I do my teaching through a relational pedagogical approach is to use my own lived experiences. So prior to becoming a teacher or a lecturer here at Leeds Trinity University, I spent 15 years in the youth justice system working with some of the most deprived and marginalised children in the city of Leeds. And then prior to that, I spent time incarcerated in the prison system from the ages of 17 to 23. And prior to that was addicted to drugs and spent time in the care system. So I use those experiences strategically to bring myself into the space when I'm teaching for people of different ethnicities, different races, different religions, but also different experiences of where they come from. Because I believe that bringing self interpersonally, into teaching, into spaces helps to reduce disparities and inequalities that students may see in university.
Okay, so this presentation is about the ongoing crisis of racism and anti-racism, particularly as that applies in universities, and developing and implementing new strategies to deal with new forms of racism. So the idea that racism adapts, shifts and changes over time and accommodates to new forms of society, education, policy and government is nothing new. But we've seen a particularly new form of racism since the 2008 financial crisis, and particularly since the 2016 Brexit vote and the rise of Donald Trump in the United States. In this historical context, some people might call it the post-truth era. We've seen particular attacks on anti-racist work. In and of itself is now presented as being racist. So there's a new form of racism known as anti-racism. And it's in this environment, which is an extension of, I guess, what some people would call the hostile environment, which was a phrase deliberately used by previous Tory governments, that we're talking about strategies to combat racism. So since at least 2010 and post the financial crash, we've seen a rise of public pedagogy, which is devoted almost in its entirety to dismissing anti-racist work. And much of this is focused on new forms or relatively new forms of academic work, such as critical race theory, updatings of the black radical tradition, but also, what informs our thought in critiquing this new form of public pedagogy is a whole host of critical perspectives on education, such as critical theory and critical pedagogy. For example, if we look at David Theo Goldberg's work, we see that critical race theory in and of itself has become the target of a whole host of right-wing media outlets. And the type of critical race theory that's caricatured in these outlets is designed to re-signify the meaning of critical race theory. So in the mind of the public now, any mention of CRT is seen as some extreme, reactionary, in itself racist view about racism and anti-racism. Now, this makes dealing with racism in educational contexts particularly problematic. So we know if we look at critical theorists such as Herbert Marcuse, for example, that in order for diversity interventions in universities to be successful, they need to be pretty comprehensive and all-encompassing. So we can't have bolt-on interventions about decolonising or anti-racist pedagogy or whatever. We need to immerse ourselves in those types of practices. So Marcuse argues in what he calls, he introduces a concept called repressive tolerance. Marcuse argues that in order to deal effectively with racism, for example, in educational settings, we can't just present little snippets of anti-racist practice. Doing that sets up that kind of discourse as some kind of extreme outside niche area of study, which further serves to alienate that from the mainstream. These kind of ideas have become more developed. If we look at critical race theory, for example, where one of the main tenets is that racism is embedded to such an extent within Western societies and Western educational systems that we need to tackle that head on. We need to take a structural approach to calling out structural racism. Again, in the black radical tradition, we see that writers going back to the 80s like Cedric Robinson, for example, but more recently with Kehinde Andrews, where racism isn't seen as an anomalous, aberrational occurrence. It's embedded in the very political, economic, cultural, and social systems that we live in. Trying to present these ideas in any meaningful way in a university has become increasingly difficult because of the political climate now around racism and attitudes to anti-racist practice. In this presentation, what we're trying to do is take those fields of thought and provide some kind of autoethnographical accounts of how we're trying to operate within the political, socioeconomic and educational policy context that we've just described to drive forward anti-racist practice and anti-racist pedagogy. And I'm going to hand over to my colleagues now to talk through, from an autoethnographic point of view, their experiences and their accounts of what we've been doing around this.
Hi, my name's Adib and I'm a student at Leeds Trinity University, Level 6, Criminology with Police Studies.
Hi, my name's Hasnain. I'm Level 6, studying Criminology with Police Studies.
As we reflect on our time at LTU, we can recollect certain situations where there's been more than a dozen cases of racially aggravated and racially profiled cases against students within the university. Lecturers across the board, as well as staff alike, are seen to be privileged in a sense, where they feel as though they can speak to students in a certain way just because of the power they hold. Whilst they speak to students in this way, they come across as racist and arrogant. As we have experienced this firsthand, we can evidently say and conclude that this has a detrimental impact on the mental health of students and staff alike who have to deal with the situations, such as the security staff and the student support managers. In addition to this, one way in which the university can deal with this situation successfully and comfortably is by training all lecturers and senior members of staff in speaking and dealing with the situation comfortably, so that students and staff alike are both comfortable with the situation and happy, and so that no one is upset at the end of the situation.
My top tips for the awarding gap for staff is to allow students from institutions to give them support and training for the awarding gap and making a safer environment for students from every background to feel equal and safe in the institutions up and down the country, and to help them get their best award possible that they'll deserve.
Hi, my name is Akib and I am a postgraduate student at Leeds Trinity University, and I am currently studying childhood and education. My personal experience throughout the years of me studying have been well. I feel like I've learned a lot throughout these years. So my top tip to students who are going to start studying is to make sure to have a good relationship with your tutors and your lecturers. They will provide you with a lot of help and a lot of support if you connect with them and actually contact them and ask them for help. So as an Asian male coming from a community where not many people end up in education or end up studying or end up going to university, my advice for people like this would be to stay away from people who don't really want you to achieve anything or to get anywhere career-wise. Certain people like to hold you back and they don't really want to see you do well. So my advice would be to focus on yourself and just try to keep the people that in your life happy by doing these things.
Sometimes it's like an ugly yellow, and I like a nice yellow. Like yellow's my favourite. I'm probably talking more about yellow than actual what you talk about. Hello, I'm Nimra Satar, and I'm a student here at Leeds Trinity University studying education studies. Before education studies, I was on the teacher training course. In my first year of teacher training, I was doing really well and I had a really good placement experience. When it came to my second year of teacher training, it went downhill. The placement I was at, I felt like I was constantly bullied by the staff there, and it had a really huge impact on my mental health. And when I spoke to the university about it, they did kind of do something at first, but then afterwards they stopped doing something about it. About halfway through placement, I felt like I couldn't take it anymore. It just felt like one of the worst times of my life. So I just left it, and the university pretty much said that I couldn't stay on the course anymore. And that just made me feel like I wasn't good enough to be a teacher. I was thinking maybe I could just obviously do the PGC after this, and I was totally fine with that. But then I was thinking maybe I'm not a good enough teacher, and I was thinking that I might have to go to another career. Some months later, I've decided that I want to stick with teaching. It's something that I've been passionate about for a while. But I feel like the staff here should have been more supportive of my placement. I couldn't let one bad placement experience ruin the rest of my life for me.
Hi, I'm Ronnie. I'm a level 6 English and Media student at Leeds Trinity University. I'm getting involved in the Awarding Gap project because I think it's really interesting to basically explore and examine all the anti-racism practices and just make sure that students get the grades that they deserve.
Hi, I'm Alicia and I'm a third year student at Leeds Trinity University. We wanted to talk about some of the issues that could be addressed within university to benefit the overall experience of students, which for me I feel is a sense of belonging at the university, which is important, and building personal and strong relationships with lecturers and personal tutors, which I feel could go a long way and help support students on their university journey. I feel like it's important for minorities to have their own spaces to like talk and be able to relate with one another. Also, being from an out of town and traveling, being away from family, it's important to be able to build close relationships with students that maybe you feel like you can fit in with, have similar interests with, similar backgrounds, and it just overall improves your university experience and it makes it easier to complete deadlines, get work finished, and you just feel a sense of home, even though you may not be in your hometown. It just helps you achieve your goals.
Thank you very much.
That was perfect!
Cheers, that was really good.
I loved it. That was brilliant.
Hi, my name is Ehtizaz. I am 21 years old and studying digital marketing at Leeds Trinity University in my third year right now. My first year's experience was quite easy in a way because I started university in the COVID times, and it was a really big jump from college to university because I was just an average student at college, and coming to university with big expectations was kind of downfall for me because my expectations weren't met because the environment that I got was kind of isolating in a way. Even though this campus is great, it's quite small, everyone's lovely, but you sometimes get that vibe. The first year wasn't the strongest year. Having the connection from your teachers, your tutors, is a really important thing. That's today's message as well. I feel like a classroom should become like a family. Student can openly ask the teacher or tutor what their struggles are academically or even personal sometimes if they want to chat to their personal tutors especially. It's really important for teachers to have the mindset where you are not just teaching children, you're teaching adults. So having that balance where you are teaching young minds but also adults. I have become more aware of my surroundings and what precautions I need to take, especially dealing with people, because my social anxiety is quite high and I'm an introvert person. So that explains a lot of things when it comes to me meeting people and interacting with people. Becoming someone who was very, very shy person who did not want to talk to anyone, to changing myself into actually wanting to talk to people but not being able to 100% be comfortable. I think that's a challenge that I've tried to overcome and will overcome in the future. But I think especially coming to uni, that's the only strong thing that has helped me, is that I've become more confident in myself and more expressive, especially when meeting people and getting to know different mindsets, different ideologies. It's really important to know all this, because when you're just stuck in a bubble, I feel like you get more disappointments and your expectations are not met in that sense, because you're just thinking in just a one small bubble because you don't know what's going on around you. So meeting people and interacting with people is a really strong thing to have, especially when you go into unis or even when you start your first job. I think mingling with people, getting to know everyone, I think is the best thing you should do.
Hello, I'm Paige Wong. I'm currently doing my Masters in Childhood and Education here at LTU. I've progressed from the foundation year of working with young people and family. I am here today to talk about my progression through university. And I've been doing this since level 4. In level 4, I was a participant. In level 5, I did a placement. And level 6, it was part of my dissertation. And now in level 7, it's also part of my dissertation for my Masters. The decolonising checklist consists of pedagogic approaches, curriculum content, students' experiences of sense of belonging in the university, including cultural beliefs, and then it also goes on to assessment support. Some points that can be included are the theoretical approaches that staff use. Staff could share lived experiences to alter the power dynamic between students and themselves. Having staff look into assessment types, negotiating questions, as well as assessment methods, and negotiate questions around, I don't want to say that word actually, around BAME. I don't like that word. What, do you want me to just say it as a sentence? I don't like the word BAME.
No, I mean, tell me, why?
Okay. Do you want to ask me the question? No?
No.
This co-creation project around the awarding gap is dear to my heart because I am a BAME student. I do not like the term BAME as it puts us in a category all lumped together when we are an individual person. This project has helped me deliver professional development alongside Syra to other staff members around the awarding gap. Oh my God.
Leeds Trinity University, as well as other universities, are guilty of race baiting, where they create a false portrayal of a diverse and inclusive environment. But when you go to these places, even though they are diverse, it is very much segregated. Why is that? Throughout my years here at Leeds Trinity University, I have had to learn about majority white old European theories, which I've had to include within my assignments. 2, we never had the chance to learn about Muslim scholars' perspectives on certain areas within education, even within our reading lists, which are written by white old men as well. So I believe we should diversify them as well in order for us as students to achieve a wider knowledge base about different cultures and religious beliefs as well.
My name is Liam Penny and I am a student at Leeds Trinity University. I'm going to be discussing a little bit about the awarding gap and then talking about my own experiences within the uni, whether they're positive or negative. Now, the awarding gap in itself, I think one of the bigger points that needs to be made is that no one really knows about it. I mean, even when I took this course, I wasn't 100% sure what the awarding gap was or what it entailed. And I find that the more I learn about it, the more I realize that there are a lot of pressing issues within marking, whether that be discriminatory or just general bias, that needs to be addressed. A lot of problems today are very easily addressed and not really dealt with, but this is a problem that hasn't really had much addressing to begin with anyway. So I think in order for us to make any kind of progress with this situation, if you will, it's to make it more known to students and staff that there is an awarding gap, and this is something that needs to be resolved. And in regards to my own experiences at this university, it's been both hit and miss. I can't say that I've been misrepresented. I can't say that I have been accurately represented, especially in the pandemic. It was very hard, and I did reach out for mental health help. The feedback I got from the university was quite poor. You get emails about it, but when you actually reach out, it can take a hot minute for you to get a reply and stuff like that. Other than that, and other than how crap my first year was living on campus because of the pandemic, generally speaking, my university experience has been good. The staff on my film course have been very accommodating when I have reached out in regards to my work and when I have been struggling. First year or two of university was difficult because of the pandemic, but I felt like in the film course I'm doing went out of their way to reach out to me and other people, check on their well-being and what have you. And I think that to be really important as well. And it's also something that we're still feeling the repercussions of today. Like I haven't always been the most sociable person, but the pandemic definitely did set me back a few years in terms of my social anxiety and what have you. And I think that in itself is also something that needs to be acknowledged. There are a lot of students that study here, but they never come into lesson because the means of transport make it too difficult. There could be a lack of funding. And as well as that, because of the pandemic, that a lot of people still do have a lot of issues with social anxiety and general social settings in regards to education. That has affected me as well. And I think that is also a problem that might have to be addressed. But other than that, I've had relatively positive experience at this university. I'm grateful for the opportunities that have been given and handed to me as well. It's just a case of taking advantage of those opportunities because so many of them can come through. It's very easy to let them go over your head and not think too much of it. But there are opportunities there for studying for me in terms of my own personal experience. However, all we are finding out with the awarding gap and with the general biases that are within university or maybe just the educational system as a whole, I am more likely to fare off well than others because whether it be background or the color of my skin, whether it be fortunate or unfortunate, life has been made a little bit easier for me than others. So sure, I've taken advantage of that, but I'm here now talking about the issues that do need to be addressed. Not to do with my own guilt or anything like that, but just because it feels like the right thing to do. And I've made some good friends in the process. There you go. Is that enough? Enough content, you reckon? Yeah, we'll do that.
So when it comes to my experience within my university, it's been pretty uncomfortable, as in like the degree I'm studying in, there's not like a lot of people in the class. And like till this day, you think that within our final year, everybody would come together, but there's still so much segregation, it's unbelievable. Like no one really interacts much. Everyone's got their own like little groups, and if there's like lack of group communication, even when there is, we just feel uncomfortable, and it just makes me so conscious, like just in case I say something wrong, because obviously don't really have much of a relationship with these people just because we've not really got to know them from start of the year. There's not really been as much icebreakers as I do think there should have been. And I just hope moving forward, I do actually want to study next year, hopefully, at this university. I just feel as if there should be like more icebreakers, and I feel like people should move around, speak to people, because at the end of the day, we are all one community, regardless of who we are, where we come from, we're all one, and that's the way it should be. I just want everyone to integrate rather than segregating and just make the community and the university a better place to be a part of.
I feel like my experience with university has been really positive because I've had a good bunch of lecturers. So anytime I've sort of needed help and I've messaged them, they've always replied to me. Like they've always been really helpful. They've given me the help that I've needed with my assignments, with any sort of lectures that I'm struggling with, any sort of ideas that I need. But I do know that a lot of my friends with their lecturers, sometimes that hasn't been that extra support that they've needed. So when it's come to like them doing assignments and stuff, they've really struggled, or they've not wanted to reach out to the lecturers. And I think that's really important when it comes to like studying and stuff, because if you haven't got the right support around you and the people aren't helping you out when you need the help, or like when you're struggling, then that can really impact your grades and your sort of like ability and like your motivation to complete all the work that you've been set.
Hi, my name is Razia and I'm a final year journalism student at Leeds Trinity University. I struggled a lot with making friends in the first year of university and the second year, and have only now found people from my own community and outside of my community. And I think that was mainly because the university didn't offer many resources or activities for me and other students to go out and socialise outside of the course. So I think that's one thing that the university should work on. Because my class size was really small, and over the 3 years it's just gotten smaller, where in our main class there's about 4 people. So obviously I would say, I think maybe the lecturers thought that we were already so close because there was only a few people, but that wasn't the case at all. And I think because of that, I sometimes had no motivation to come into university because I didn't have anything to look forward to. I would say that there weren't many icebreakers, again, like I said, because teachers assumed that we had been close, and I don't think they placed much of an emphasis on making friends, and I don't think they realised that that's an important part of university. Obviously your grades are important and the studying is important, but how you get there and the support that you get whilst you're on that journey, that's also important as well. Because if you get a really good degree and you get all the job offers and or everything that you needed, but you have a bad memory of university because you didn't have anyone there, you felt very lonely, then I don't think that that's worth it, I guess.
Making students feel wanted within the classroom is extremely important. There's many cases nowadays within university and other educational institutions where students are made to feel neglected within classrooms due to their race or where they come from. This is unacceptable, especially within educational institutions such as universities. I myself have witnessed within lectures, within meetings, where students, because of the fact that they're from a different race, they are treated differently, and that is unacceptable. Students, whether they're from a different race, a different ethnicity, a different part of country, or if they're from a more disadvantaged background, that does not matter. It's important that we make everyone feel wanted, and we accept where everyone's from, and we accept that with the way everyone is.
Hi, my name's Hasnain. I'm in my final year of criminology with policing, and today I will be talking to you guys about feeling of want and inclusion inside a classroom. So the reason I've chosen this topic today is because if a student is having the feeling of want in a classroom, firstly, it will make them want to come to all the lectures, but secondly, help them achieve all their goals that they've come to university for. On the other hand, if inclusion isn't involved in the classroom, you best believe from personal experiences you would not want to go to any lectures, and making a student want to drop out, fail their assignments, which they know deep down they can smash out the park, and basically get the best degree they can get to achieve their goals for the future and get the best jobs for them that are out there.
I'm Saira Shakir, Associate Professor in Learning, Teaching and Strategic Race Equality Lead at Leeds Trinity University. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about co-creation as a pedagogic approach to decolonising the curriculum, embedding anti-racist practice, all with the aim of reducing inequalities, particularly for BAME students, that's Black, Asian, minority ethnic students in higher education. I just want to underscore that this work is not just about supporting that marginalised or minoritized group, but about our white students, our non-BAME students, because to help the most disadvantaged students is to actually help the whole of the community. Co-creation. Why did I embark on co-creation? So I was incredibly compelled to act when I first looked at the disparities for BAME students at our university several years ago that were highlighted particularly through the then Race Equality Charter survey that our university was embarking on. There were instances of racial discrimination that students had shared through the survey and through follow-up focus groups that really worried me, really concerned me. So how can we tackle this really wicked, pernicious problem? So co-creation became a means through the curriculum to look at this problem more closely and to work out strategies. Because essentially, if we're going to do anything about racial discrimination, anything about, let's say, sorting out the curriculum for our students and improve their experiences, we've got to listen to those who are most affected and those who experience it firsthand. So co-creation is really about this collaborative effort between staff and students to co-develop the curriculum in this instance and to empower the students to be ambassadors of their own wisdom. So that's why I embarked on co-creation several years ago. It's been a successful way of teaching and learning, not only just for the students, but for me as well as a member of staff. I've learned so much from my students. And essentially, we're empowering the students to be agents of change. We're working as a community of practice, and we are influencing policy, initiatives, processes and practices of the higher education establishment. So the ways of working, the way that we teach in terms of curriculum, EDI strategies, initiatives around supporting student belonging in welcome periods, how we communicate with our students, how we nurture them to become parts of our community and that we're all in this together. That has been at the heart of my approach. I'm going to stop there for a minute because I think I've talked enough about co-creation.
Okay.
Right. Right, so let's see what's next. How long was that?
3.5 minutes.
Okay, oh, that's quite long. Okay. So within the co-created approach, it's about dismantling those power dynamics that often exist between the educator and the students. My students are not just vessels that are there to be filled up by me pouring knowledge into them. This is very much a partnership arrangement between the students and staff where we work together, we listen to each other, we learn from each other, and we develop strategies, resources, materials, and ways of working around the curriculum, around learning and teaching, around assessment, and so on. Now, the critical race theory perspective that really wraps around this co-created approach is primarily the focus that I am interested in and what I feel that my students have really started to embrace. One of the key tenets of critical race theory is around storytelling and listening to those most oppressed and disadvantaged, as I mentioned earlier. So for me, listening to the lived experiences of my students, what's happened to them during their university journey, the trials and tribulations, the challenges, the positive things that have occurred for them, what's helped them to get through, what's helped them to succeed, what's helped them to get to that graduation point and beyond. It's those lived lessons that we can certainly learn from and use as a way of not only just empowering our students to be making changes to the system, but also to support other students, other staff, and to build this real community of practice at the university. All right, I'm stopping there for a minute. I need to think what else I'm going to say now to wrap it up, and then whether we need to go back and edit any of this afterwards. Storytelling. For me, critical race theory and all the scholarship and research underpinning critical race theory was really somewhere I found solace several years ago. As a woman of colour in academia, I myself have experienced disadvantage. I have experienced discrimination. I am not free from those things just because I'm an academic now at university. So for me, seeing how critical race theory unfolds and how it can explain, how it can support my lived experiences, validate my own issues and challenges that I've been facing in academia has been extremely helpful. And for me, I think that's a really important way of reaching out to students and connecting with them that you may not even necessarily share the same identity or background, but there are things about my story, about their story, where we do connect and when we can form those connections and that rapport building that's part of teaching and learning, to be authentic, to share parts of our identity, and to really, I don't know what I was going to say now. Identity. Oh yeah, okay. Right, I know what I'm going to say. So when I'm hearing those stories of difficulty and challenge from my students, I am incredibly emotionally disturbed by that. Of course, I relive my own experiences, but I am in academia, I hold a position of power and privilege and authority, and it's my responsibility and my moral obligation to use that power appropriately and sensitively and to use that to effect change. Otherwise, what am I doing in academia? And my call is really for staff who work at universities to actually be part of this change and to do things differently. There is a different way, there's a different outlook, there can be a different future for our students, for our staff, and indeed for academia. One of my passions is Malcolm X, known as Malik El-Shabazz, and one of his quotes is, You know, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. You know, so this is a time to act. We should be compelled and obligated to act, to challenge these inequalities and to do something about it. Another thing that Malik El-Shabal says is usually when people are sad, they don't do anything. They just cry over their condition. But when they get angry, they bring about change. So what I'm trying to say is that I have felt angry at times. I felt very frustrated about the inertia and the lack of movement and change in the system. But we have to be optimistic. We have to strive for something better. And we have to keep chipping away at this wicked, pernicious problem. Thank you.